Alright then, hello folks, this is Josh Winchester coming to you now with episode 2 of my Comic Book Sci-Fi Kingdom video blog. Today I'm going to be talking about the history of comic books. This is what I'm thinking, and I want to get your opinions and stuff about this later. Doing a series of posts, video posts, about the history of the comic book, in the superhero comic book in America. So today, I'm going to be doing today's episode about the golden age of comic books. Now this was a period from 1938 till 1950, and this is like when superheroes, the concept of the costume adventurer in the comic book medium, first came about. Now you see, before that, during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, people had something else. They had what are called pulp novels. Now, pulp novels were like these really cheap books printed on paper made from the leftover stuff in the vats of paper mills. And so they were called that because of the type of material they were used in making them. But they were these cheap, like dime and nickel books. You could get all different kinds. You could get your romance, your science fiction, your gruesome horror, your adventure and stuff like that. And those were kind of like, they were in a sense like comic books back then during the 30s, because they still presented strange adventures and stuff to people. And there were comic books during the late 30s as well, but not like what we have today. They were just reprinted collections of newspaper comics, like Dick Tracy or Blondie or Brenda Starr or what have you, that was printed during that time period. But then, in 1938, something amazing happened. For the first time ever, Action Comics #1 hit the newsstands. This is the website coverbrowser.com. This is a favorite place of mine to go and just look at these golden age covers. But yes, again, June 1938, something amazing happened, and that something was Superman. Appearing for the first time ever in Action Comics #1, published by National Publications, which would eventually become DC Comics. They took that name in the later 50s. Superman was created by two small-town Ohio boys, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Now, this first issue alone did not just have Superman. Yes, it has him on the cover, but there wasn't just a Superman story. There was also appearances by Zatara the Magician, Congo Bill, and your other adventurer characters. The comic book back then was a very different medium than from what it is, say, today. One issue, one plot line. You would get multiple stories. We're talking like a 64-page magazine here, folks, for a dime. And you would get maybe like maybe five stories, maybe I don't know how many. So you really got a lot for your dime back then, folks. But yeah, and then 1939. Something else amazing happened. Another character appeared on the stands for National Publications in the pages of Detective Comics. Now that man is someone everybody knows and everybody loves. The Dark Knight, Batman, first appearing in the story The Case of the Chemical Syndicate. This not only introduced Batman, it introduced the alter ego of Bruce Wayne, and it introduced Commissioner Gordon. And that was only in 1939. Within a space of 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, 2 years, you already had two of the most recognizable characters in comic books out there on the stands. And a whole lot more followed. You had Wonder Woman appearing in her first magazine in Wonder Woman #1. Yes, it's still Diana of Themyscira. She had all her powers. She had the magic lasso. You had the Flash, but not the Flash that everybody knows. No. You had a different Flash. Back in the Golden Age, during the 1940s, you had Jay Garrick, the original Flash. Yes, the costume is very garish and silly, but, I mean, aren't they all garish and silly? But you had the Flash, you had the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, whose ring was actually not the technology of the Guardians of Oa, from where the other guys get their equipment from. Yes, he appeared in All American Comics #16. his ring was actually mystical in origin, fueled by a mysterious energy called the Starheart, which is later explained in the later decades and stuff. But yes, basic line, you had him. You actually also had the first super team during the 1940s, the Justice Society of America, the first ever teaming up of multiple superheroes. And the first lineup here on the cover for issue 3 is the Atom, Sandman, Spectre, the original Flash, Jay Garrick, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Green Lantern, Alan Scott, and Our Man. Now these guys were the 1940s predecessor to the Justice League of America. I mean, and they were amazing. They had fantastic adventures. One of my personal favorites is a series where they team up against the Injustice Society of America. And that's them going up against in issue 37, multiple villains. The Wizard, the Gambler, Vandal Savage, the Thinker, Brainwave, and Père Degaton, all teaming up against the JSA to try and take over the world in typical supervillain fashion. But yes, that was just national publications, or DC Comics. You had timely publications, which would eventually become Marvel Comics. And you had them publishing Captain America. You had them publishing Marvel Mystery Comics with the Submariner and the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond. Now this guy, he was not like the Human Torch we know of in the Fantastic Four. No. This guy was actually a synthetic human, an android by science fiction standards, who, when his body would come in contact with oxygen, would spontaneously burst into flames. Now over time he would learn to control this ability, and he became the Human Torch. And there was also Pep Comics, which eventually would become Archie Comics. Archie Comics, they had, let me just see if I can pull this up for you guys. They had the Shield in their magazine. They had the Black Hood. They had the Hangman. Man, they actually also, Archie did appear. He appeared in the back issue of Pep Comics number 22. First time ever. He wasn't a teenager. He was kind of like a junior higher in high school. Or a junior higher, my apologies. That did, however, introduce Archie and Betty and Jughead. But it wasn't until much later that we got Veronica and all those other guys. And it wasn't until issue 36 that Archie actually also got his first cover. He's seen here on the cover with the Hangman and the Shield. And over time, yes, the Shield still sold magazines and stuff, but over time the Costumed Adventurer really dwindled, just due to the end of the war and stuff. It wasn't until issue number 51 in the late 1940s, when the Shield was completely kicked out of the magazine, it became Archie, America's favorite boyfriend. And that was kind of the downfall of the golden age of comics, just because with the war ending and stuff, and the Axis powers having been obliterated, thank goodness, there was no need for costumed adventurers battling supervillains and the Axis menace. All the good villains were gone. You lost your typical spy supervillains, your typical Nazi supervillains, or what have you. And so they were replaced by different comic books. They were replaced by Archie, they were replaced by science fiction magazines, they were replaced by horror comics. But I'm going to get to that in my next video episode. So I really hope you enjoyed today's. Feel free to comment on this video or videos. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. And also be sure to check out my blog, joshwinchester.blogspot.com, where I come to you day to day with news on everything. Comic books, science fiction, all that wonderful stuff. So thank you. Thank you everyone out there for viewing, watching, reading, and have a good day.